Dr. Sharma, part of what made me kind of uncomfortable watching the CNN show about Hinduism was that in translating Hinduism to a non-Hindu audience, Reza Aslan is sort of claiming the authority to speak on behalf of the Hindu tradition. And I was wondering what you might say about that. Who can speak for a tradition?
I think everybody can speak for a tradition. But the important thing is to be clear about what one's intentions are. Even if we want to present a tradition in terms, a tradition as it is actually followed by the believers, then the believer should present the tradition, right? If you want to understand a tradition as it is believed in and followed by the believers, then the believer should explain the tradition. If we want to convey a certain tradition as the believers believe it, but we are not a member of that tradition, then we should convey it as the believers believe it. In the first case, the believers convey the tradition. In the second case, I believe the believers when I convey the tradition. Though I am not a believer, I believe that the believers believe. I may or may not believe. Right? But if I am a student of religion and I want to move beyond the self-perception of the believers, either because I find that there are branches of study like the sociology of religion, the psychology of religion, which give us deeper insights into a religion which are not accessible, at least directly, to the believers. Or because I believe that when I look at all the religions together, I see patterns or the ways in which they interact, or all of them act, things they cannot see just because you have only one sample, but patterns which become clear when you have many samples. Then I can speak for a tradition, but not as a member of the tradition or as presenting the tradition, but as a scholar of religion. My view would be that all these are legitimate, but it should be clear as to what one is doing. Now, what is Reza Aslan trying to do when he is pointing out these unconventional aspects of the traditions?
Well, I think that's what's confusing. Maybe you've hit the nail on the head, because he's purportedly trying to show that most Hindu practitioners don't behave like the Agori, but maybe something else is happening there, or maybe it's about good TV ratings.
To which he has himself admitted. To his credit, I would say. But as a student of religion myself, I am all for drawing attention to the illuminating properties of the extreme case in the context of any religion, provided it does not reinforce the stereotypes people have of that religion. Or rather, in a context in which the stereotypes of that religion might get reinforced. Now, the entire discussion in the Hindu community, almost the entire discussion that I am aware of, has been on these so-called bizarre aspects which he has highlighted according to members of the Hindu community. He says some positive things about Hinduism, but they have got obscured by the emphasis of by the attention the sensational aspects have garnered. Now, whether this was by intention or accident, I do not know. But there's something here to be corrected. And of course, we are in our own way, humble way, trying to do that by pointing out, by pointing out how that portrayal may have misrepresented the tradition.
Do you think that if there had been kind of like a warning, or if there had been some sort of acknowledgement that the agori and that sort of extreme behavior, the antinomian behavior, has historically been stereotyped as the main tradition, do you think that would have gone far enough?
Well, I mean, we have some elements there which can be distinguished. Firstly, there are clearly some misrepresentations from the point of view of the tradition of the Shivlinga. Clearly a misrepresentation of the philosophical point of the tradition, the karma doctrine. There is a somewhat cavalier description of Benares. The holiness doesn't seem to come through. Ashes are not dumped. The ashes of the dead are immersed in the Ganges river. And there is a whole mythos underlying it as to why it is done. All that gets shortchanged.
Well, I noticed that too. I mean, there's a disconnect between the language that maybe an insider would use and the language that an outsider would use, like dumped, or like the obsession with purity and that kind of thing. That maybe as a viewer you don't notice the way that it's being framed, but it might.
These are loaded words, yeah. So yes, it's a good idea to have a series on religions in our troubled times. But it should not be of the kind which adds to the trouble of the times.